Sorry, I've been moving stuff. My bad. Frambois Goza. Sorry, I lied. We're going to go with that. That is my bad. You already opened the other one. We'll get to it shortly, so it won't be a big deal. We just had a issue on my end, so we switched to the phone. So we're
So,
Frambois Rose Goza.
can you guys hear me?
Do you need another glass?
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I've got a few announcements. Most of you were on the last beer tasting. I kind of want to go through just a few points as we get going this evening. A few announcements. Please keep your mic muted unless you're going to be asking a question. That makes it easier so there's not a lot of feedback between anybody as we go through the tasting and the questions that we're having. 3 beers we're tasting: Frambois Rosé Goza, followed by Tropical Hazy Sour Ale, and finally the Barney Flats Stout. We have Andrew joining us tonight, so taking the time out to come and join us. As we here, please go ahead and Bois Rosé. As we are going through the tasting, it should be about an hour, 15 minutes. You don't have to go anywhere. You're at home. So the great part is you don't have to drive. So you can have all these beers. If you do want to not finish a beer, set it aside. You can finish it later this evening. We'll talk through them. I will not play expert because I'm not. That's why you have the guys from Anderson Valley here to talk about it. So this is interactive questions and just kind of an exploratory into a brewery that most of us will never get the chance to go to since it's all the way out in California. And they're drinking it like 3 o'clock out there. So they're going to be pretty happy that they're doing it too. If you do hear kids walks through the area, that's a symbol to drink. So please take a big chug. We've got a 4-year-old in the house, so he is hungry. Who knows what's going on? So I'm going to turn it over for a second here to the crew from Anderson Valley to introduce themselves before we get started talking about the first beer. So Anderson Valley crew, go for
it. Hey, everybody. Cheers. I'm Kevin McGee. I am, as of December, the new president of Anderson Valley. My family bought it in December, but thankfully, Fal is here to make sure that I don't screw anything up. And he's been involved in the brewery for a long time, and it's fun to taste beers with you guys. And Fal.
Hi, I'm Fal Allen, Anderson Brewing Company's brewmaster. I've been here since off and on since 2000, and we are excited to drink some beers with you guys. So ask all the questions you want, and we'll try and answer them honestly, sort of.
Perfect. So here's how this works. I have a list of questions that I will happily ask. I would rather everybody else ask questions throughout the evening. So what I'm going to do is I'll introduce the beer that we're drinking, give stats about it. I pulled this stuff from your guys' website. I'm not writing it by myself, nor do I ever claim to be doing that. Then I'll ask a few questions to get started. And then as you guys want to, please jump in, ask questions, answer as much as you, or answer honestly, guys from Anderson Valley, or don't answer at all. That's fine. So a little backstory before we get into the beer tasting. I have actually been to Anderson Valley. I took a 3-state beer trip last year to Colorado, Nevada, and California. And to be honest, and this is no joke, we went to some amazing breweries over that span. Anderson Valley was one of my favorites. It's kind of in the middle of wine country. That kind of where I understood that being at. We ate at a breakfast place around the corner, great food. Went there and had 3 or 4 beers. I was not the driver, and loved it. And actually, when I found out that Terry was carrying Anderson Valley at Twin Lions, I was like, hey, I've been there. This is awesome. So that's kind of my story with them. But the beer we're drinking first is your Frambois Rosé Goza. According to your website, by adding rose hips to the boil and fresh raspberry puree at the end of fermentation, this kettle sour beer is a melange of flavors with a light root hue, subtle raspberry fruit notes, greet the nose, and fall soft on the palate. Tangy, hibiscus-like flavors mingle with the salty tartness of Goza to create a uniquely complex, refreshing drinking experience. 4.2% ABV, 12 IBU, and they've got a lot of interesting facts about hops, malts, and yeast. But take a sip, think about what you taste. Smell it, sip it, let it sit on the tongue, and then Kevin or Fal, give us your story here that's not the marketing jargon we put on the website.
We're going to be rewriting a bunch of the market jargon, but pretty much all of that stuff is accurate. The one thing that isn't in there is that it's only about 125 calories. So it's really nice, light, especially for a nice, summer weather kind of beer. Doesn't weigh you down. Very perky. Actually goes really well with food because of the acidity. And I mean, Fal, you made this beer. Know a lot more than I do.
Well, it's a variation on classic German style called Goza, and the classic style doesn't have any flavoring to it. But quite often at the breweries or bars where they serve Goza, they will introduce flavors at the time of service. So we thought we would try and get some interesting flavors into the beer prior to packaging. And so this is one of our early attempts, and I think it's one of our better attempts. And it was done by a former brewer of us. We were shooting to make a kind of a rosé wine type of Goza, and we tried using grapes, but none of those formulas could really work for us. And then one day, our brewer said, "I know what to do: rose hips and raspberries." And he developed a recipe and made this really delicious beer. And one of my favorite things about this beer is the aroma. It's just, you really get both the rose hips and the raspberries in it. And then it's just really nice, easy drinking. It's not overpowering, not too sour. It really has a nice balance to it, I think.
That's the big thing about like the Gozas and the kettle sours is that they're not like crazy sour like maybe the Lips of Faith series you guys might have had and something like that. I mean, they're kind of tart like lemonade. They're really approachable. They don't kill your palate. They don't really overwhelm a lot of the senses and stuff. So it's just a good beverage.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question is: you said you do other variations of this. What other variations do you guys do of this Goza?
We do. Certainly, we have had some good success with the watermelon, and we do a blood orange. We still make the original Goza. We do the framboise. We do a Michigan cherry. And those are the 5 that we have been very successful with. We've done some variations over the years. We tried one that was gin and tonic flavored, which with all the herbs that go into gin as well as tonic. And that was an interesting beer. People liked it, but I think we couldn't really find a good name for it. It didn't sell very well. We've tried a lot of different other things, and I'm sure we'll try a few more. But really, those 5 seem to have been our the ones that we're sticking with that are doing really well for us.
Awesome. I'll open it up to anybody else that has a question before I hop in and start talking. You guys can't even see my face. Lord, look like I've been drinking all.
Kevin, I understand that you said you guys just bought the brewery just a year ago?
Yeah, in December. So it's been 5 months, basically. Well, a little bit more than 5 months.
Can you give us a little history of Anderson Valley prior to your purchase?
Oh, sure. Now, the brewery's been around since 1987. One of the reasons that I've been working in beer, wine, and spirits for almost 20 years now, and I turned my garage, which is about an hour away from the brewery, into a commercial brewery back in 2007. So I'm running a 1-barrel brew house out of my garage for 13 years while doing consulting work and other kind of business level work in craft beer and other stuff. And so my family and I had a conversation last year about, getting into a, long-term business, something that, we could really grow some roots in and take like a multi-decade, multi-generational approach towards running. And I've been in the business of doing basically kind of like business turnarounds and consulting and crisis management and all kinds of stuff for 25 years or more. But the one thing I really like doing is I like running businesses. So we looked around at some craft breweries because I thought that that was just a great place to be because of the people that are involved in the industry, mostly actually, and also just because beer is a great product, and it's beer is 8,000 years older than Jesus actually, and so it's like between beer and bread, those are the two most durable consumer products. If we're going to do something that we want to be involved in for the next 50 to 150 years, it's a really good place to live. So I had known of Anderson for years, ages, beforehand, and was able to get an introduction to the managing partner at the time. And we sat down and had lunch and talked about craft beer. And he had been at the helm of the brewery for about 10 years. And I think, I don't think he told me, he thought that, he had kind of spent his time and it was time for him to make a change. And it was a good time for us to get involved. And the idea of being able to get involved in a brewery that had this much history and provenance and authenticity and never really made a misstep with any of the beers that it made over the last 33 years was a pretty crazy opportunity. So just kind of overjoyed that we're involved here. So the brewery started in a pub that's over that way, and moved to the current site back in 1996. So we're on 30 acres up here in the middle of a little town called Boonville, which has a population of about 1,000. And from this little town of Boonville, we distribute to 39 states and about 15 different countries, and been able to make kind of a really go at it. And really, it's been a testament to the beer quality over the years that has driven it. And so that's in large part due to Fal and his team, and just kind of happy to be part of it. So not sure if that answers your question or not, but I figured I'd ramble for a few minutes and
Okay, so for Fal, you seem to be around for a little bit there. What is your favorite beer that Anderson Valley produces?
That's kind of an unfair question. That's like, what's your favorite child? It changes a lot, and I think every beer has kind of its own place, and so it depends on the time of year or what you're doing. My current favorite is our black rice beer, which I think is just a phenomenal beer. 3.8% alcohol, less than 100 calories, super flavorful, really nice drinking beer. And it's new, so not a lot of people have not tried it, but that's one of my favorites. I think of our older lineup, the Palico Pale Ale is my favorite beer. It's also very just nice drinking beer, accessible, goes great with food. And of course, Boon Amber. Who doesn't like Boon Amber? It goes really good with pretty much everything, particularly barbecue, which is one of my favorite things.
Kevin, what's your favorite?
Well, I like a lot of different beers for different reasons. If I'm going to sit down, it depends on what I'm eating, who I'm with, what the weather's like. Right now, in the hot weather, probably the next beer that we're going to try, the Tropical Hazy, is probably my current favorite. But for the most part, if time and energy is no object, I'll reach for the Huge Arker, which is basically our barrel-aged imperial stout. It's 15.5% alcohol, and it's just mind-blowingly good. And but other than that, I spend a lot of time outdoors, and so for recovery beer, I reach for just what Fal said, the black rice, which is a pretty phenomenal thing. It's like nothing else out there. Basically, it's a Michelob Ultra that tastes like a craft beer. It's pretty cool. So
awesome. And last question I have. Go ahead.
Oh no, but I also have access to pretty much everything at the brewery, and I'm still less than 6 months in, so I'm like a kid in a friggin' candy store. I'm just kind of grabbing whatever no one can watch me take out of the building is pretty much what I'm taking home.
Awesome. So now for anybody who hasn't been out to your guys' facility, could you give a layout? Because I thought it was one of the more interesting of the places I stopped at on my trip. If I was showing up at your place, what would I see? What would I get to experience?
Wow. So you drive in, there's a gate that's right off, there's a corner. And actually it used to back in the 1800s the property was referred to as the Corners. It's kind of a historic location in the area. But so right around the corner, there's an entranceway that's got a gate inside. And as you pull in on the right-hand side is our brew house. And behind that is our cellar, which looks like a big, warehouse building. But the brew house is kind of a 2.5 story, probably actually in height it's 3 stories because each story is pretty high. Building with a sloped roof, and inside are these 4 gorgeous onion-shaped copper kettles that were brought over from Germany, and they're all hand-hammered copper from Bavaria. And so you can see those in the window, and then off to the left-hand side is the tap room. We're doing a lot of work on the tap room right now, moving some fence lines around and expanding the beer garden. But as you pull in, there's a lot of really old oak trees. There's a pen with some goats off to the left. We have, like I said, 30 acres, and we run a disc golf course on the property. And depending on the weather and the day and the events that we're running, we let people camp on the property also. So there could be a couple kind of, if they're friends and family, they're basically defined as miscreants anyway. So there are a bunch of miscreants somewhere, in a tent on the property. There's a stream that runs, across the back of it, and it's kind of quiet. From the outside, it looks a little slow. We get working pretty early in the morning, so it's very much, in that kind of wine country sort of imagery and pace. But like I said, we spend a lot of places that have been making a lot of beer for a long time around here. We're surrounded by some of the most beautiful terrain you ever saw. I mean, we're literally in a valley that with redwood studded ridge lines off to the west of us, off to the east. It's a little bit more kind of that California hills. It's pretty idyllic. We get a lot of birds. There's a moth outside my window right now. It's about the size of my palm. It's a pretty amazing place to come to work.
Awesome. So,
Hey, Chris,
we ask any
I've
other
got
questions?
this. Steve, we lost the contact information, just signed in. So what are we drinking, and what have we done, and what's next?
Okay, so as we're talking about this, right now we are finishing up Amboise Rosé Gose. If anybody is still needing login information and they can't see us or hear us, I posted on the Human Lions Facebook page login information. So just go to the post about the virtual beer tasting. You'll find that information there. Next, in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to open up the Tropical Hazy Sour Ale, followed by the Barney Flats Oatmeal Stout. So you haven't really missed a ton. We're just hearing stories about the location in California and kind of favorite beers and a little bit about them. So it's open for questions now. If anybody wants to ask Kevin or Fal any additional questions before we move on to another beer.
Question for Kevin. So, solar powered brewery. Enlighten me.
Yeah. So first of all, you don't look like Stephanie Taylor, but
No.
So the cellar and part of our parking port all have photovoltaic cells. So we've been running solar here since what, like 90 what? Or maybe 2001, or when did they go in, Phil?
I think it went totally solar in 2005.
Yeah. So we've been running that for a long time. Actually, I'm looking at the idea of like whether it makes sense to upgrade the technology that we're using. But as the brewery grew, the brewery's energy demands increased. So right now, we probably defer 40-45% of our electric usage through solar power, and we've been doing that, like I said, since 2005 at least, maybe a little bit. I think there's some stuff that came on little bit earlier. But we do that. And then, some of the other things that we do that are consistent with that is all of our waste grain goes to the sheep farmer across the street. And another crazy thing that goes on here that no one really knows about is we source all of our water from 10 different wells on the property. And then we take it, use it as processed water. We treat it, use it as potable water for the tap room. And then as wastewater, we treat it on site here. We've got 3 different settlement ponds. And then we use it for irrigation on the property here too. So we actually have a 0 impact on external water resources. We are a completely self-contained water usage, treatment, and disposal site. And that, combined with, some of our waste management for the solid waste and things like that, makes us kind of, I think actually technically we would be a negative waste processing facility, but it's hard to tell with some of the definitions that are out there. So, I mean, the solar is just kind of one piece, but the ecological commitment that, Ken Allen and the original founders set up, and that has been continued for the last 20 plus years, has been pretty amazing. And that was one of the things that kind of struck me as I dug into it and got to learn more about it more than 10 years ago, was how kind of responsible the whole process really was. We're still looking at, adding, we've got some more roof space. Out here in California, we've got fires and some fire danger. And so the Pacific Gas Electric, which runs everybody's electric, decides to shut everybody's power off for certain times. And so we're looking at options other than a diesel generator. And I'm thinking about, some, battery banks, expanding our solar array and seeing if we can do that. And that's still in process here, but we're going to be improving our solar use, and then some of the other stuff that we're doing too. We got some plans to make sure that we remain 0 waste and responsible about what we're doing. So I mean, again, me and my family plan on being here for ages. So taking care of what we have here and what's around us, is really important. And also, just in context, I know Chris has been out to the brewery, but if you come out to Anderson Valley, you'd be an asshole not to be environmentally responsible. So,
Gotcha.
That would be very fair. So,
Appreciate the response.
congrats, everybody. We got time for one more question before we crack open another beer. We have time for a lot of questions, but I'm empty, so I give everybody a little bit of a. I'll tell you, it was easy drinking because I didn't realize how quickly I just drank that.
rolling the tasting with an iron fist. Everyone drink now.
Hey,
What does the term ghost mean? G-O-S-E. Not familiar with that.
Sorry, what was that?
What does ghost mean? G-O-S-E. I don't know what that is.
Goza. Fal wrote the book on Goza.
It's a German word. It's actually a place name. There's a river Goza in Germany, and that's where the beer was developed, and the beer was named after the river Goza. So Goza is a spot in the forest to take a respite, and so the beer that came out of there is I think it's fitting that it's a beer that's light and easy drinking and good for respite.
Also, just so you guys know, Fal literally wrote the book on Goza. If you go to the Brewers Association and look up their publications, there's a book on Goza, and he wrote it.
Okay, Fal, when you say Goza, because I've had quite a few, they're not as popular.
Here's the book.
Be out California out west. What are you typically looking for in a Goza? What do you typically find that's kind of your traditional that you're going to taste throughout that?
Well, the things that you'll see in a Goza for certain is it's going to be sour. It's definitely a sour beer, which is unlike most German beers. Most German beers are not sour. Today, we have kind of a monoculture of German beers, but there used to be hundreds of different varieties of German beer. Mostly what Germans are known for now are their lagers, their pilsners. But 1,000 years ago, they had a lot of different beers. And one of them were these sour white beers. And the most popular of the German ones was known as Goza. There were other variations on that. Grodzki, the Belgian wit beers are probably an offshoot of that original style of beer. So they're definitely going to be light and sour. When I say light, they're both light in alcoholic content as well as light in color. They were definitely a little bit hazy, a little bit sour, and in Goza in particular, there's some salinity to the beer, and it's debated as to whether that salinity was added or whether it came with the water from the river Goza. But in all likelihood, it probably wasn't. The river wasn't that saline, and the beer had salt added to it to give it a little more body. So the kind of the hallmarks of a Goza beer are that they're going to be light in color, slightly saline, and slightly sour.
Okay. I did not know you literally wrote the book on Gozas. That is a very interesting bit because I've literally ever had them and I describe them as sour and salty. That's always how I described them, and usually some sort of fruit added in. But that's good to know. I didn't know there was a river Goza in Germany. So I'm glad I now know that.
I tell that whole story in this book, which you can buy online.
Plug the book harder.
Okay, so this is now we're going to open up the Tropical Hazy Sour Ale. So that's our next beer that we're having. While you're opening that, since they were talking about Gozas, Theory over at Twin Lions does have an additional Goza. It is the Kimmy, the Yank, and the Holy Goza. I've had it once. Val, you want to give us some background on it? So you can get this from Terry over at Twin Lions.
So the Kimmy, the Yank, and the Holy Goza was our original Goza. It's unfruited and unflavored in any way, and it's just a straight sour, slightly saline wheat beer. And it's pretty typical of what you'd find in Germany, both in the breweries today and, in past centuries. The main difference, I think, is that our version of the Goza is a little more sour than you might find in Germany. I think the ones in Germany are a little softer. They're not quite as sour. But that's the main difference. So it's the original that we did, and it's completely unspiced, unfruited.
Okay, so now do you add in the flavoring like the rose hips and the purees into that base beer, or is this something that you brew completely separate recipes for both of, or all four of them?
All the Gozas are the same base beer. So we take the recipe for the Kimmy, the Yank, the Holy Goza, and then we'll add fruits or flavor, fruit or spice additions to it. We believe that you're going to get your best flavors and aromas from using as close to the source as possible. So we don't use any extracts. We don't use any, false or fake flavorings. We use purees sometimes. We use whole fruit when we can. We try and get them aseptically sealed or frozen to get them as fresh as possible. And with the herbs and the spices that we use, we try and get those in, usually into the kettle, and usually fresh and not dried, but sometimes dried is actually better than fresh. For example, with the rose hips actually develop a flavor while drying, whereas if you use fresh ones, you get the same kind of quality. So we use dried rose hips.
Okay, awesome. So, Tropical Hazy Sour Ale. Hopefully everybody has opened it up. I already saw Tim say it was awesome. You're ahead of the game, Tim. Stop it. This is pleasantly tart and refreshing. It's using a kettled souring method to the Goza series of beers. Tropical flavors are introduced in the fermentation process through the use of real guava and passion fruit. Finally, they found that leaving the beer hazy resulted in a more aromatic beer that added an overall balance of the beverage. And as a bonus, in case you guys are curious, it's only 126 calories, 9 carbs, 4.2% ABV, 12 IBUs. And if you wanted a good food pairing, you can go pad thai, spicy and ceviche, which you all know we have plenty of in Newcastle. And sharp cheddar, aged goat cheese. We can probably find some sharp cheddar around here, but outside of that, probably not. But this is pretty good beer. If I,
Kevin, that's an excellent summer beer there. That's a patio pounder beer for sure.
Absolutely. That's actually my wife's office smells like tropical hazy sour. It's totally now that the weather has turned, it's permeated my house and the couch and everything else too. So it's nice that way.
what was your guys' idea behind this beer? It said it was first brewed in 2020, so this is obviously a newer beer, and it should be like Kevin was here. Is this something that has been worked on for years, or is this a brand new creation? Is it a market? What kind of story?
It was actually brewed last year. So it was this previous. I can't take any credit whatsoever for this. This was the brainchild of my progenitors. But it's awesome. Really a lot of from talking to folks, and Val might have more on this. It seems that sort of taking the gozas, backing the salinity down a little bit, upping a little bit of the fruit. One of the interesting things about it is leaving it hazy. It's not like a hazy IPA will, because it's left hazy, will lose a lot of its aromatics as it travels and as it ages. The sourness in the beer seems to support those aromatics a little bit better, and so it seems to work. The hazy idea kind of works a little bit better in this format. It might have something to do with some of the suspended solids from the fruit that we use or something, but kind of magic. But it's just such a really drinkable beer. It's just really friendly, and like it's low 4% alcohol, 125, 126 calories. It's not going to weigh you down. It's just a good beverage. So they evaporate readily at the altitude of my house. This is probably the beer that has disappeared more at my address than any other.
Okay, so being from Indiana, most of us, like I grew up surrounded by 3 cornfields with a 4th one across the street, but at least had to break it up. I've always noticed that beer trends tend to originate on the coast. So you go west, east coast. I know you guys are on that west coast. What can we be expecting in craft beer? We're usually a year or 2 behind you. What can we be expecting here in Indiana to start coming down the pipeline as it starts moving from the coast towards the Midwest?
That's a tough question. Things are changing so quickly in the beer scene, the craft beer scene. It's almost impossible to guess what would be coming up next. I mean, a beer like this, nobody would have guessed that there was going to be a sour fruit beer, that was this light drinking 5 or 10 years ago. So I think anybody's guess is what's going to happen next. I'm predicting black rice.
Yeah. So yeah, and the black rice is something that's totally different than anything else. So so you guys know, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Actually, my family's from Buffalo, and I grew up with basically in high school drinking Labatt's Blue and all the stuff that we could, because it was like the idea was all the good beer comes from Canada was the thinking when I was 15, 16 years old. But I think there's been a lot of trends that have come from the West Coast, partially because there was just some clusters of people, like Vinny Cilerzio comes to mind. Fal actually comes to mind. Bryant Hunt, a few others. And then you've got, the lovable maniacs down in Stone that are trying to jam as many acids in a bottle as possible. And then the list goes on. Starting with Ken Grossman, obviously. And so it just may be that there was this cluster of people that were kind of driving some of that and then sending it. But I'm not sure that that's the case anymore. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on the East Coast, particularly out of, North Carolina and some other locations. Like anything from I don't know, Lord Hobo and Trillium, and Dogfish Head, obviously you got to think about. Harpoon's been launching some interesting stuff, even everyone, on the West Coast, it's like no one's thought about Harpoon for ages, but I went to school in Boston. So, but they've lost a few things. So, you know, it's really kind of hard to tell. And then you've got folks like BrewDog who took what was going on in American craft beer, started it in Scotland, leveraged the ability to not have to deal with Tied House, and became just a worldwide phenomenon. And now they're doing, I think, 70,000 barrels in the United States now too. So I think innovation right now has become so democratized that it can really come from anywhere. And folks like Hill Farmstead, folks like, you know, Lawson's and stuff. I mean, they're pushing, you know, a lot of what really is innovation now. And you know, what used to be coming from the West Coast and being kind of, you know, driven to the East, I think got absorbed and digested and is now being iterated, and it's resonating from anywhere. It's almost, you know, I mean, the West Coast, I don't think is the engine of innovation in craft beer that it used to be. I mean, there's still a lot of very talented brewers out here, but there's no longer a head start on the rest of the world that it may have had back in, you know, 2000 to 2010. That's done. That's gone. So, you know, the thing about beer is that, you know, you can, you know, if you've got a good water source, you can get any ingredient you need delivered to your place, you know, at any time of the year. So your recipe doesn't exist in nature before you make it, which, you know, makes it a little bit easier because you got control over your ingredients, but it makes it harder because if it sucks, it's your fault. So it's, you know, I think that it's a totally long-winded way of dodging your question, but I think there's so many good brewers these days that it's impossible to try and pin a trend right now. It could come from, you know, anything could come from anywhere. I mean, like New England IPAs and that kind of thing. No one knew about that. You know, like a fruited sours, no one knew about that either. It just so happened that, you know, the gozas that Fowl was making here, you know, got a lot of resonance, you know, in terms of being, you know, a beverage and hit at the time. New England IPAs, you know, or hazy IPAs, kind of did the same thing. And so, you know, the next big thing could come from anywhere.
Okay, any questions from everybody else before I continue to hog the mic and ask questions the entire evening?
Yeah, I got a question for him.
Go for it.
Did you drink any Genesee Cream Ale and Old Vienna when you were growing up in Buffalo?
Absolutely. Old Vienna was actually an aspirational beer because if we couldn't steal the Jenny Light out of my friend's father's garage, we were lucky to get Old Vienna. And then there was the big one was Brador. If we could find Brador.
Molson Brador? Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah. We thought that it was kind of a banner evening.
Yep, absolutely. That was good stuff.
Other questions? Is a question for you, as I saw from one of the chats, is the black rice lager you keep talking about, is that going to be distributed nationwide to your 38 states, or is that something we got to drive a long way for, like Coors in Colorado back in the day?
No, black rice we do have available nationwide. The tough thing about the black rice was that it was launched last fall, kind of as a concept, and I don't think really kind of understood what we had when it was launched. So it wasn't launched with any real kind of energy or marketing or direction to kind of say, you know, what it was. Because of that, it hasn't really gotten as much, you know, broad distribution as we're planning on. I'm going through the process now. We're going to be updating our cans and packaging and the branding and those kinds of things. And so we're doing that right now. And we're going to be relaunching the black rice, you know, when we do that, and doing it with a lot more energy, because it's such a good beer. And, you know, if we launch it and give it a good shot and give it every chance that it has to kind of be appreciated for what it is, and it doesn't work, then I'll still sleep well. But it's such a good beer. It deserves a better shot than it had. So we're going to try and do that. We just gluten reduced a pilot batch here to make sure that it still meets our quality control standards and our flavor standards. That's just about done. And, assuming that that's there, that's going to be our go forward, recipe for it. So it's going to be gluten reduced in addition to being under 100 calories, and, still maintain, a pretty unique flavor profile. So if you go to our website, on our website, there's a red button in the top right corner that says Find Our Beer. You can put in your address, and you can put in, you can actually select what item you're looking for, and it'll vector you in if you're within 100 miles of it. There's Black Racing. And that'll let you know if it's close by. But if you are interested, and if you've got a line to your local distributor, talk to them, have them put it in an order. We'll be able to arrange with the distributor to put a little bit of product on their next order coming in. And if you ask them and they ask us, we're obviously happy to ship it out. So we don't really do direct to consumer sales for the most part, particularly through COVID. We've taken the tact of trying to direct people to our local retailers because they've got families and employees, and our distributors have families and employees. We kind of we need everybody to be healthy through the whole process, and so rather than trying to sell direct to folks, we've been pointing them to local retailers. But in the case of if you're looking for some black rice and you can't find it in your store or something like that, just give a call to the brewery. We'll figure out a way to ship you some if you want to do that.
Awesome. Charlie, do you have a question? I saw your mic.
Yeah, I'm not sure about tonight, but our last go around, our distributor was on a call in. So our local distributor may be on the phone listening to our conversation tonight.
Go ahead.
I think so.
They're wily. Those guys are really, your distributor is they're really nice guys. They work well. They do a really good job by us too. So they're solid folks. So props to.
Well, and they live right here in the neighborhood with us, so they're local people for us. So that's always nice to have.
Okay, so my question: when I was out there, it was summertime. It was close to this. I noticed you guys had a few bourbon barrel aged or barrel aged beers there. I know Terry carried the old fashioned. What other ones do you have, and why does that have a turkey? Turkey? Can you give what's your barrel aged program like? I'm usually a barrel aged guy, so what's that look like out there?
So turkey's a quick answer. We source all of our bourbon barrels from Wild Turkey.
Oh, okay.
They're great folks, great to deal with, and we go through a lot of bourbon barrels, and they put them on the truck, and we can buy them in the quantities that we need. When back in December, when I did a count of the barrels, we had just about 1,500 barrels that had stuff in them, and we had probably 2,000 empty used barrels that we basically did a massive neighborhood giveaway, and they were gone in about 30 hours or something like that. But we roll through barrels pretty readily. We have a couple really strong barrel programs. We do a bourbon barrel stout that spends 6 months in bourbon barrels, which is awesome. It's 6.3, about 6.4% alcohol. So it's actually, for a barrel aged beer, it's kind of sessionable. Carries a whole lot of flavor from the barrels, but it's balanced, so you can kind of enjoy it and understand what it is. There's the Huge Archer, which is the extension of that, which spends about a year in a barrel and comes out at 15.5. That's an evening in itself. Foul is punching weight bourbon barrel aged imperial stout. And then we do a bunch of others. There's the old fashioned is one of them, but then there's another series. There's like the Pinchy Jeek. There's a handful of other things that come out of the barrels, and then there's our sour barrel aged program, which produces like the Gatlin Damnosis and the Thrib Current and the Horse Tongue and a few others that are kind of, because they're barrel aged, and those ones in particular, sour barrel aged, some of them spend 3-4 years in a barrel. So those are kind of limited, and those are the ones that are more or less, tap room or kind of direct, or somebody's got to know somebody to get some type of thing. But all of them are interesting because over the years, I had been brewing in my garage for long enough when the barrel age thing kind of started to be kind of critical of, or at least know what I'm doing enough in tasting, iterating recipes to go through, some of the barrel age stuff when it really started getting, kind of cool and hip to do barrel age things. And like 95% of the barrel age beers just were not improved by putting them into a barrel. And another thing that I was happy about in terms of talking to Anderson is that Anderson was one of the exceptions. It's like everything that goes into a barrel for a reason. The beers that we brew for the barrel aging program are specifically brewed for that. It's not like we're taking, some overage of, a beer that we've got and just sticking it in a barrel and seeing what happens. It's a very considered kind of specific thing that we're doing. And it shows, it's everything is balanced. It's very drinkable. It's not, kind of, over your head with a lot of oak and weirdness and, kind of undisciplined, unbalanced kind of beer. It's still really approachable. So I love our program, actually. I think our beer program is awesome.
So this is your warning to start finishing up this beer or set it aside. We got another question that I'm going to let us talk through here. I know from talking with Terry and others in the Newtown area, we're a town of, how many are here? I grew up in that cornfield, but a smaller town. Not pretty much Twin Lions is the only craft beer spot you can go to. One of the kind of best sellers we have are your summer and winter solstice. So can you guys give us those, because I know that's some people here that have probably had your stuff before diving into the ones we've had. Probably have started with those, because I know Terry carried summer solstice on tap. So it was one of those first tap beers we had in the area. So would you elaborate on those two beers, or that series, I guess?
Yeah, Val, why don't you take? I've been shooting my mouth off.
Okay. Well, we originally made the winter solstice, and that is, when we first opened 33 or 4 years ago, we mostly modeled ourselves after a British brewery. So the Boot Amber is basically a British pale ale, and the IPA that we make, the Hop Otten, is our rendition of what an English IPA was at the time. And most breweries in Britain back in the 70s and 80s made a winter beer. So we made a winter warmer called Winter Solstice, and it was quite popular. And I think it's pretty true to style. It's a good, full-bodied, beefy winter beer. It's got a lot of nice sweetness, a little bit of Christmas spice to it, and it did real well for us. So a few years later, the very owner said, why don't we do a summer version of a winter warmer? And that's what the summer solstice is. It's a kind of a smaller version, like a little brother or sister of the bigger beer. So it's a lot less alcohol in it, and we had to scale back the spices a little bit. But it's a very, accessible beer, and a lot of people have been calling it, like adult cream soda. It's very easy drinking beer. And as Kevin was saying, one of the things we shoot with all of our beers is to make beers that you want to come back to. They're repeatable beers. They're not way out in left field. And we do make some unusual beers, but even those have to have balance, and you have to want to go back to them. And I think one of the great things about the summer solstice, it's a beer that you really do want to come back and have a second or third one of.
Very nice. Any other questions before we move on to our next beer from the audience? Okay. Last beer for the tasting. Barney Flats Steel Stout. So I just want to give a shout out to Terry. and Twin Pines. If you guys need any of this beer that we're drinking this evening, try the other ones, the Kimmy, the Yink, and the Holy Ghost or Old Fashioned. The only place within 30 minutes, 45 minutes to find this beer is going to be at Twin Lions. So I know that Terry's going to be open 5 to 7 this week, and you can an invoice for it. But if you like the beer tonight and want some more to drink, make sure to get your beer. I know that we're doing another beer tasting next week with Sunny at Indianapolis. So we went West Coast and then we went like backyard. But make sure that you guys, if you're part of this one, make sure to check your calendars for next week, and we'll have those guys on as well. But let's talk Barney Flats Oatmeal Stout. So, according to the website, you're going to keep hearing me say that, it's an unparalleled drinking experience. The deep ebony color, voluptuous mahogany head, and bold roasty flavors in our Barney Flats Oatmeal Stout. Serious beer drinkers expect from this style. Aromas are freshly baked bread, espresso, dried cherries, and they melt seamlessly with the rich beer, creamy mouthfeel to create an unparalleled drinking experience. 5.8% ABV, 14 IBU, 205 calories. It's kind of like a dessert. Typically, you should serve it in a pint glass. And if you guys, anybody makes French onion soup, pairs great with that. Pulled pork, chocolate desserts, smoked Gouda or Havarti. Oh, it's a nice hot day. I think my watch tells me it's like 81 outside right now. You're in Indiana. Great day to drink a stout. Val and Kevin, give us a little backstory that's not on the website with this one.
Well, as I said earlier, we started off as a British style brewery, and this is a very classic British oatmeal stout. It's low gravity, so 5.8% alcohol. It's got a big charge of oat in there, which gives it a nice, full, creamy mouthfeel. And we kept the roastiness toned down, so it's very chocolatey, very roasty, but it's not overdone. It's not over the top. And again, I think this is a beer that it goes great with food. It pairs awesome with any type of barbecue or anything grilled. The roastiness of the malt picks up from the roastiness of the food. It goes good when you're cooking in the food, so you can use it as a marinade. And I think it's just all around really delicious beer.
Okay, Val, so question. When you say oatmeal, I know that some of us have an idea of what that means. What does the oatmeal do to the stout that makes it taste a little different in the mouth?
So the oatmeal gives it kind of a real fullness and richness. Oatmeal is not a grain that's commonly used in beer, but it can't make beer just from oatmeal. It has to be used in a very small percentage. If you take it too far, if you use too much of it, I think you get kind of a flavor that's harsh. But used in a small amount, 15 to 20%, it has a real richness to the beer. And you don't get that from any other type of grain. And the oats have to be processed ahead of time, so they're steamed or pre-gelatinized, and they come to us pre-gelatinized and then dried, and that kind of adds in this, I think, kind of wonderful creaminess to the beer.
Okay, Kevin, I know you're doing 5 months now. Where do you see Anderson Valley going in the next 5 or 10 years?
I would expect us to, first of all, the beer isn't going to change with the stuff that we have right now. For me, and I think I've mentioned it in other forums before, but for me to come in and say we need to change the beer is like, coming into the Beatles' White Album and saying we need more cowbell. It just doesn't, I'm not that kind of person. So for what I see for the brewery is that the issues that this brewery has had over the years have never been with the liquid that it produces. The beer quality has always been absolutely world class, and I've been drinking it as a fan for 20 years. What you'll probably see from the brewery is we will be louder We will be hopefully more front of mind for people when they think about beer. We're going to get more active here at the brewery and, kind of invite people to see who we are and why we are a little bit more. And then, around your guys' part of the world, hopefully we'll have more outreach and be more important to your local markets too. So a lot of it really is focused on not doing anything different because there's nothing wrong with what the brewery's been doing. It's just letting people know that we've been doing it right for so long. And it's something that I think a lot of people want to know about. The quality of the beer, like I keep saying, has been unparalleled. There's nothing to, it's like I kind of come in, it's like, there's nothing for me to apologize for. It's not like we did some sort of weird slushy stout kind of, thing that, went horribly wrong and all the cans exploded and that kind of thing. And I have to convince people that they need to trust us because the last experience they had, really failed them. Like I said, the beer's always been good. So it's just a matter of trying to get across, like I said, who we are, why we are, which is more important, I think, today than ever. And I'm going to keep doing it this is my last job. I'm, from here, it's, my daughter, whether she cares or knows it or not, is going to take over for me. She can't escape that destiny. I haven't told her that yet, but well, if it's not her, it may be someone else in my family or something like that. But we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be relentless about evangelizing the fact that we just make awesome beer, and it's for real reasons, and that's probably what mostly you're going to see from us.
Okay, and then my last question before I turn it over, I have some other hidden ones if anybody has or doesn't talk. But out of the people I reached out to, I went down Terry's list of breweries that supply beer to that craft beer bar. You guys were the first to respond to me, like almost instantaneous. Why in the world are you spending a Tuesday afternoon speaking to like 15 people in the middle of the day? It's 3 beers at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Wait a second. So you're telling me what could possibly pull me away from my workday to drink beer?
Yeah, kind of. Just wondering.
In part, it's a continuation of what I just said. It's the brewery was not really promoted or marketed. There wasn't a lot of communication coming out of the prior ownership. They didn't do press releases. They didn't do a lot of other things and that kind of stuff. And like I said, the idea, of trying to communicate to people, what we're doing and why we're doing it, is key. And frankly, the fact that you guys reached out to us and wanted to know more about us, I'm like, why wouldn't we pick up the phone and talk to you? It's like, if you're, if you're in a position like I'm in right now, and I take an attitude like, why would I want to spend my time with these people? We're in the wrong business. It's like, beer is, well, it's been euphemistically referred to as a social lubricant and a lot of other things and things like that. But really, it's a core to social interactions and experience. If you don't like people and you don't like beer, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be involved. And so, the idea of sitting down and having a beer with a bunch of people that want to know more about our beer, I'm returning that phone call every day.
Yep.
This is more important than anything I could be doing with this hour.
Beer is very social, and it's a big part of what we do. You got to like people in order to enjoy beer. So we're more than happy to participate and call you guys and talk about beer. Who doesn't want to sit around talking about beer?
I like to. I'm not sure about everybody else, but I think
those people are wrong.
I saw these other people on our beer tasting over the last month that we've done. So I think they like it too. So I'm going to turn it over to them. I haven't heard much from Tim. I saw Matt Ryan talk about how he can't figure out which beer he wants to take on vacation. I know that
We'll make more. Don't choose. We got. I got 30 acres in a brewery. I got resources, man. Don't worry about it.
Take them all, man. Just take them all. Can't go wrong.
Any questions?
I do have a question. So, my wife and I, she's sitting here and listening in, but we love to travel, and we love food and beer and wine, and I love bourbon. So, when I say that, some areas, either some regions or festivals or things that we should put on our sort of bucket list, places to go. I mean, we've been to the country a bunch of times and love that.
Have you done the Bourbon Trail down in Lexington?
Yeah, several times.
Nice. Yeah, I got down there. There was a time when I was running some businesses down there. We had a horse farm, and so we were very close to the Bourbon Trail, which was pretty fortuitous. I don't know. There's so much in wine. I mean, it really kind of comes down to what kind of wine you like. I spent a lot of time as a wine executive, and I did a whole bunch of work in wine as both a consultant and in-house with different companies. My email is kevin.mcgee@avbc.com. Just tell me what you like, and I'll put the list together for you.
Oh, great.
And and Chris has got my email too. Yeah, feel free. But like I said, I've been in and around all the underbellies of the wine world also, in addition to beer. So I've got I could have some insight for you there.
My dog likes your beer, by the way.
Nice. So does mine. I got my wife has a 5-month-old puppy. If you go to our Instagram feed, you probably see it. But at like 5-6 months old, it's totally trying to steal beer. It's disturbing.
Charlie, do you have a question?
Oh, I've got a whole bunch.
We can't keep them too long, Charlie. You can only ask.
That's all right. We have some customers who are really excited about getting summer solstice. Is it shipped to Indiana?
It has shipped. I don't know if it's been shipped to Indiana. Tell you what, I will take a note and I will confirm that.
Now for some humor, do you want to give us any insight on the history behind the saying on the top of the cans other than since 1987?
Oh, Ball Hornin?
Absolutely.
So, being the new guy, I got as a gift a book on bootling that I keep on my desk so I know what everyone is saying about me. And so Ball Hornin, ball means good or great or kind of the best, and Hornin is referring to drinking. It's like a drinking horn. So Ball Hornin means good drinking, and there's a lot of other vocabulary that mostly is centered around NC-17 kind of topics. But FAL has a much more facility with the language. I've kind of made a strategic decision that I'm not going to slaughter the lingo with my feeble linguistic skills. That would be a disservice to the history of it. But FAL's got a lot more.
I'm not, I'm not fluent in bootling. Now, for those of you who don't know, bootling is an American lingo, and there are only 3 recognized American lingos in the U.S. There's Hawaiian Pidgin English, there's Creole, and there's bootling. And it's a real thing. People think we make this up, but it's not. You can find it on the internet, so it must be true.
Abraham Lincoln says so.
Bootling, it's an American lingo that they developed here in the 1800s, and it's so unique that they used it as a code language during World War I, like they used Navajo during World War II. And it was spoken and actually taught in the schools here. And if you're not from here, you will never understand what they're saying. Most of the words come from events or people that lived or happened in the valley. And so, for example, a shovel tooth. is a doctor. You'd never be able to guess that Shoveltooth meant doctor, but it's because the local doctor in Boonville had these two front teeth that look like shovels. So, I mean, it's certainly a unique language, and we have tried to keep it alive by using it in some of our advertising and on our beer labels, because who else, what other brewery in the world can say they have their own language that they can talk about people in?
So that's also when you on the bottle caps, on the underside of the bottle caps, a lot of times you'll see some bootleg, like a phrase or something like that. We have some resources on the website, but not much because, again, NC-17. But if you ever get a bottle cap that you can't translate, just email it to like the info AVBC thing. We'll the thing. But like one of the things, so like the Barney Flats. So Barney Flats is the old bootleg name for a state park that's down the street called Hendy Woods. And then, like Palico Pale Ale, or Pale Ale, Palico is up the road called Philo. So it's a lot of local. It's basically created to make sure that anybody who was from Boone, from the Boone area, could talk about stuff without having outsiders know what they were talking about. It was just it is a very complicated and extended series of inside jokes.
I'm telling you,
I really enjoyed all three beers tonight. For those who have joined, we do have a few more of these at the bar. So people can order them because we're staying online for actually on ordering and pickups on Friday nights for a while longer. We also have the Holy Gosa and the Old Fashioned. I know we did those as add-ons as possible pre-game beers. If anybody wanted to do pre-game tonight or next Tuesday, we still have plenty of those available. And I'm certainly looking forward to getting Summer Solstice back on tap.
If you have the opportunity, try the Old Fashioned. It's one of those beers that, I mean, no one really else is making anything like it, and it's really well done.
Old Fashioned when I'm having just the bourbon and the cherries, or is this like a Wisconsin when I got the Sprite or the soda?
This is a we care about what we are serving Old Fashioned.
And then I guess my last question that I have, what's with the bear with the horns? Bootleg thing too, or no?
It's so that the original joke is that if you cross a bear and a deer, you get a beer. So the horned bear is actually a beer. And so when you look at a lot of the old, I mean, kind of the hidden joke in a lot of the Anderson Valley stuff is that you'll see Anderson Valley referred to as the legendary bootleg, the legendary Boonville beer. And that's kind of got a double meaning. I mean, first of all, it's we make beer that comes from Boonville, but then the idea of the legendary Boonville beer is also kind of like the Sasquatch, antlered bear that lives in Anderson Valley. So, and over the years, he's been named, is often referred to as Barkley. Working with, I'm working with some designers right now. You'll see a lot more antlered bears because I think the antlered bear is basically awesome. And it's also a nexus for all kinds of different things that are important to us about the brewery. It's a way of talking about environmental stewardship. It's a way of talking about, being fun, but also having a lot of, weight and gravitas in your particular area. So I got a notebook. I got about 7 or 8 different ways that, the antlered bear sort of personifies things that are important. And so you'll see more of that from us, as the days go on. But it's one of my favorite things about the brewery.
Okay, Okay, any other questions that anybody has as we finish up the last bit of this beer? It is open for questions.
Question for Kevin or Fallon. Can you walk me through the lot code that's on the bottom of the can?
Yeah.
We use two different numbers on the bottom of that can. One is a internal number that means nothing to anybody except us, and that's just for our tracking. And the other one is a Julian date. So Julian date starts with the number of the year. So this year would be 20. And then the next three numbers are the number of days in the year. So 2002 would be made on January 2nd of this year.
Sure.
Right. So Chris has got his up. It says 200037, means that was made in 2020 on the 37th day of the year.
Now walk me through the bottom.
Those are lot codes. Like it has to do with like the number of brews that we put through our system, and it's kind of it doesn't have any context outside of what we're using our resources for.
Fair enough.
I have a question and a comment. First, a comment. I had set these beers in the refrigerator yesterday, prepping them for today, and I was watching a TV show. My wife, or not my wife, but my daughter came down and said, "Hey, did you buy me some wine in the refrigerator?" And I had about a week ago, so I said, "Sure, yeah." Not paying much attention. I wanted to get back to the show I was watching. And so last night when I went to go to bed, I noticed that, and I'm not sure how you pronounce it because I come in late, that Gause, G-O-S-E, was completely empty. And it's like, what the heck? Well, I thought that was the wine. No, that was my beer. And then so later, after I calmed down, I said, well, how'd you like it? Oh, I thought it was really great. It was not too fruity, and it was a real good taste. I wasn't sure if it was a beer or a wine. So I don't know if you take that as a compliment or what, but
That's absolutely the spot that we're trying to hit with that. I mean, drinkable. It's like basically if someone can drink that and it passes off as a rosé champagne or like that kind of thing, then I'll take that. I mean,
I was happy with it. She was bragging to her sister and her brother about it on the phone today about how she liked it. So.
Well, I mean, that's ultimately the point. I don't care if you call it beer or wine. If it's a beverage you enjoy, that's makes me happy to be here. So
okay. And then my question is there much of a difference? And I'm sorry for joining late. Is there much of a difference in the beer that's in a bottle versus a can, or is it just an economics game?
It's actually not so much an economic thing. The cost difference between canning and bottling, I mean, it depends on a lot on the brewery and the resources that they have installed in the brewery, and whether or not they're running their own lines and what size lines and how efficient they are and that kind of thing. So it's not so much an economic thing. It seems it's more of a consumer preferring that particular vessel. Glass is a little bit heavier. There's recycling advantages to using aluminum over glass. You can take aluminum, into the woods or whatever, and drink it, crush it, and then you carry it out. It's a lot lighter. On the other hand, glass also carries with it its own imprimatur of quality and these other things too. We've done some side-by-side tasting, and every time we do, and Fal, chime in, but every time we do it, I mean, some beers seem to taste better a little bit from glass and some from a can. We never, in general, drink directly out of the can. That's the biggest objection I think craft breweries have always had to cans, is that you don't get the aromatics from the can because your nose is blocked by a piece of metal. And so we'll always pour samples out of the bottle, and the same thing. We also don't drink straight out of the bottle either. So you kind of want to put it in a glass so that you can smell what you're drinking. Unless you don't want to taste what you're drinking. I mean, like 90% of your taste is actually retronasal and it's in your nose and that kind of thing. So if you ever want to dumb down a bad beer, just drink it straight out of the bottle of the can. It'll have minimal impact. But we haven't really consistently found much of a difference between what beers in cans and beers in bottles of taste. These I haven't felt. You may have.
You know, the difference, I think, depends on the technology. I think if you're talking about a brewery that has equal canning and bottling capability, the difference is very little. Oftentimes, there's actually less oxygen in the can than there would be in a bottle, and oxygen is not good for beer after it's been packaged. So the less you have, the better it is. And there's also no light that's going to get through a can. You know, a can, there's just no light that gets in there. So light is also the enemy of beer. So those two things maybe give the can a slight edge. I think if you're aging a beer a long time, bottle may have a slight edge if you take care of it, because glass is completely inert, and the can liner that they use does have a shelf life of a couple of years only. So if you're planning on aging a beer more than 2 years, I would look for it in a bottle. But other than that, there's not much difference. Cans, bottles are pretty comparable nowadays.
I'd just say the cans ruin your beer cap collection because you don't get anything. But other than that, thank you.
Anyway, that raises an issue. So if anyone out there is cellaring beer or aging beer, the principle behind aging beer is the same as the principle behind aging wine. What you're doing is you're capturing a little bit of air between the closure and the liquid, and the cellaring process is just a measured amount of time with that specific amount of air that is being used to slowly oxidize the beer. So, you know, as you do it, that's really what you're doing when you're cellaring the beer. You are slowly oxidizing it with this little tiny known quantity of oxygen. And to do that, you really kind of want a bottle. But I mean, if anyone has other questions about cellaring beer or something, I'm happy to talk to them about that offline when it's not an issue for everybody else to have to listen to it.
I will email you Kevin's email address because I do have that. I know that you asked about that in the chat. We've got about 10 minutes left. I told these guys an hour and a half. I assume they may have to. I don't know. Maybe not. But any other questions for the last 5-10 minutes or so as we finish up the beer before I start breaking into the old-fashioned one I have out here? And then they can go back, obviously.
I'd kind of like to know a little bit about the two bonus beers we got here. The Old Fashioned and the Holy Ghost.
Kevin Fowl, could you give a little run? I know we already talked slightly about the Kimmy, the Geek, and the Holy Ghost. That's kind of your base beer for the rosé drink. In the ingredients to kind of take it to a different level. But Old Fashioned, rundown of this one, please.
Okay.
Guys, I gotta step away for just 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
So the Old Fashioned is kind of a concept beer. The last owner came to me and said, "We want to make a cocktail beer," and I thought, "Great, we can." You know, we just did the gin and tonic Goza. We really like that beer, and we thought, you know, we can make another cocktail beer. And I wanted to make a Negroni, but some other brewery, who will remain nameless, stole that idea from us before we got to make it. And so we kind of kicked around some ideas about what kind of cocktail beer we could make. And he ultimately said, well, you know, we're working with Wild Turkey. Why not make a bourbon-based cocktail beer? Which I thought would be a good idea. So we came up with the Old Fashioned. And I was hesitant at first because there's a lot of flavors in an Old Fashioned. So we designed a brown beer that had a lot of kind of maltiness to it to kind of accentuate the bourbon flavors. And that base beer wasn't really much of a beer. So during that process, we added orange peel, and that kind of helped, you know, lift it up some. And we thought, we're in the right direction. Then we got some cherry puree and added that for the cherry part of an Old Fashioned cocktail. And that got it a little closer. And then we ran it into a bourbon barrel and aged it for 6 months. And about, we would test it each month. And in month 4, we decided that beer just wasn't going where we wanted. So the last component of an old fashioned, of course, is Angostura bitters. So we ordered a 5-gallon jug of Angostura bitters, which came in a hazmat container because it's flammable. And then we dosed each of the bourbon barrels with the appropriate amount of Angostura bitters and waited another month and a half. And when that came out of those bourbon barrels, it really tasted like an old fashioned cocktail. It was kind of just, the whole thing was a lot of people with their input into it, and a lot of good luck. We really came up with what I think is a really nice recipe. And I think when you try this beer, you get each of those components individually working together and then melding together. So we're pretty happy with this beer. And whenever we bring it out, it sells out. We can't keep it on the shelves. Really, each year we try and make more, but it takes almost a full year to make it. So we make it, we release it, and it just sells. So you guys, it's kind of a treat to have it.
I will second. He just said every flavor, and I can taste them all because old fashions are one of my favorite mixed drinks that are out there, and I taste literally everything you just said.
Alan, I have to ask: when you buy Angostura bitters in a 5-gallon bucket, how big is the label? It's gotta be like, giant, right?
Yeah, it comes with this giant hazmat thing in the mail, and
does the label still hang off the end of the 5-gallon bucket like it does?
we didn't realize when we ordered it. We called them and said we need some bitters, and they were like, "We'll send you like a case of bottles," and we're like, "It's not going to work. We need," and they were like, "Oh well, for special people using these kinds of larger recipes, we do have a 5-gallon container," and we're like, "Well, ship it." And then the shipping company called us and said, "This is all flammable alcohol. It's ethanol, basically." So we had to find a way to get it here without violating any federal law.
So, will you guys ever get into distilling? Not.
There's a still that's in pieces behind one of the. So we have a building here that we do all of our sour barrel aging. It's known as the stables because it actually used to have horses. And tucked into a corner is a bunch of pieces of a copper still. So maybe I'm a big fan of spirits. I like spirits a lot, and I like brown spirits in particular. So we've got the room to age some stuff in barrels and capability. We actually we had a bunch of beer that we decommissioned we didn't want to use. So I've got a number of friends who are small craft distillers in the area, and so we reached out to them and asked them if they had any use for any of the stuff. So they came out and tasted some stuff, and they took away about 50 barrels worth of aged beer. And they still did. So I've got a bottle of that in my kitchen that is interesting. We might get into it. We got a lot of stuff to do right now, but that's definitely on the scenario. Like I said, I'm here for a long time, and kind of like my brown liquor. So chances are really good because I'm the president and CEO that someone's going to figure out a way to make that happen.
All right. Okay. We've got just a few minutes left. I'm going to ask the last question I always ask for one of these. For the people that are here tonight, what's one thing you want us to remember and think about when we think of Anderson Valley? I'll go to both of you on this, but what's that one thing?
I'll say you should remember Fal. In large part because Fal's been here for a long time. He's part of the institutional memory of the place, and the things that I found compelling about the brewery and I think are lasting and meaningful about the brewery is, what it's been doing over the last 33 years requires people and the humans and the people behind it. It's like, you can, especially in this day and age, you can you can inject as much technology or machinery or technology between people as you want, but it always comes down to one human interacting with another human. All of you have been tasting beer because Fal, as the brewmaster, basically kind of made that happen. And I got, like I keep saying, I got 30 acres in a brewery, and we got trucks, and we got distributors and all those kinds of stuff. But really, without people like Fal and the rest of our production team and the folks that have been here, doing it for so long, none of it means anything, and none of it really happens. So I guess that's a very philosophical answer. But if you remember anything, remember Fal.
Okay, Fal, you can say Kevin is your
Your turn.
Try yours.
That may be the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. But
Fal, I have it recorded, so you can always go back to it.
well, Kevin is correct in that it takes a team of people here to make it here, and there are a lot of people involved. And I certainly would love to say, yes, these are all my beers. I made these decisions, but that ain't true. There are a lot of people that do a lot of hard work to make a lot of really great beer here. And I think if you're going to take anything away from Anderson Valley beers that you want to remember, I think it's that we make beers that people want to drink. And if you want a second glass of our beer, we haven't done our job right. And you should let us know that we really strive to make beers that people want to have a few of and to bring people together drinking them. We, like Kevin said earlier, if you don't like drinking beer and you don't like people, then we've picked the wrong business. We love people. We love drinking beer. And we hope you guys have enjoyed this time with us.
Okay, so I want to take a few seconds to thank you both. I know that you're very busy, and I know that you said you like to do this, but take for a small town like us means the world. So thank you for taking the time. If anybody needs their beers, I know I saw there's a question if this is a liquor stores nearby. I don't know the answer. Go see Terry. I know she has it because it gets shipped there. So, or distributed there. So make sure to go see her. She's the one that kind of makes this possible. She's the one that allows me to actually put things together to do this, to just talk to people. So please place an order in the future, now, whenever. But if you do get a chance, get out to see Anderson Valley in California, in the Anderson Valley, Boonville. Hands down, like 40 breweries on the trip. It was my top 3. No joke. Really loved it. It's worth the trip out there. Thank you guys for coming, and we will see everybody beer tasting next week for Sun King. Don't drink the beer before then. If you do, you can refill the beer up, and then we'll just keep on going. So thank you guys so much, Kevin and Al. I'll send you guys a recording of this.
Al, ball horning.
Yeah, cheers. Ball horning. Cheers, everybody.
Everyone.
Thanks a lot.